Hey everyone, Jody here, sharing my lessons and struggles as I continue my journey navigating through life while healing. Only recently did I start opening up about my mental health struggles, hoping to show people they're not alone and there is no shame in seeking help. Hey everyone, welcome to Grief from Injury and the Mental Health Stigma of Athletes. Sure, physical restrictions from an injury suck, but what about the mental aspect? Sports-related injuries are extremely common, however, there's so many facets that go undiscussed. So how about we dive into a few? First up is the psychological stress that often leads to injury. Many of us have experienced that stress even if it didn't result in an injury. For those of us who've played team sports, we've heard the coach yell at some point, "Keep your head in the game." We're either unfocused or we're psyching ourselves out because we think we're unprepared. Best case scenario is we fumble, we bunk up. Worst case, we misstep, make a wrong move, overexert, whatever it is, and we end up hurt. Interestingly enough, those unfocused players are swapped out for the win and not for their safety. One of my favorite examples of sports-centric mental health stigma is when Simone Biles made the decision to withdraw from the team finals in the 2020 Olympics. She stated that she had to focus on her mental health and not jeopardize her health and well-being. The public response of judgment and outrage cast a spotlight on the issue. We as athletes are not told to make decisions for our own well-being. We're told to do what's best for the team, and that remains the expectation. Her making that call, especially at just 24 years old, took incredible courage and strength, not just to withdraw, but also to handle the backlash. The potential consequences for competing at her level under that struggling mindset could have been life-altering or worse, fatal. I don't know about you guys, but I saw so many posts on my social media feed along the lines of she knew what she was getting into, she's just weak, she's such a disappointment. And a lot of those were from people I considered close, including family. So it was incredibly disappointing to see their negative response to someone taking control and protecting their mental and physical self. It kind of makes me wonder if those are the thoughts that would run through their mind if I were to talk about my own mental health. Honestly, the cultural stigma at home is strong, so I don't even bring up my own stuff to family. Now a mental health advocate, I see Biles as a fantastic role model, not just for the older athletes, but largely for the younger generation who've yet to realize that they too can break the stigma and still be successful. Second up is psychological reactions and the stages of grief. So that you might better understand where I'm coming from, I'm not an injury newcomer. I wrecked my ankle running down a mountain trail race in 2017. Instead of accepting that I needed to sit out a few races, I continued running regardless because I'm a dumbass. Denial is a bitch, and adrenaline is an excellent painkiller. Needless to say, it wasn't remotely close to healed when I re-injured it at the North American Obstacle Course Racing Championships. It took almost a year for me to be able to fully bear weight on the ball of that foot. Off-season began right after that race, and I couldn't train as I normally did. And with fitness being my primary go-to for mental health maintenance, it kick-started the ping-ponging between extreme emotions, primarily anger, denial, and depression. I had come across an article that mentioned, quote, "If an athlete sustains a really serious injury, they actually, in a lot of cases, go through a similar process as someone who is grieving," end quote. On the 7 stages of sports injuries, which is an article I found online, it was quoted that the most difficult part about the injury was not the physical scars, but the mental ones. Sport was my form of meditation. It was my coping mechanism for everything that life threw at me, and in an instant, it was all taken away from me. This was everything I felt, and I then realized that it wasn't an abnormal thought or emotional process that I was going through. Moving on to the social factors, I don't think many people realize just how intensely social factors influence our decisions while healing from injury. A quote, "Social factors refer to the perception that in certain societies, continuing to play sports with pain and injury is highly valued, a show of commitment and strength." On one hand, the obstacle course racing community is such an amazingly supportive group, but on the other hand, there's the self-imposed stress to further push the limits of an injured body because it feels almost expected. Take Spartan Race and the ridiculous Spartan the fuck up bullshit. It initially started as a saying meant to suck it up when you're out of your comfort zone. However, that has since evolved somehow to people believing it's acceptable or expected to just grit your teeth and take on a mountain while you're still on crutches following a surgery. I will admit, a few weeks ago I was running in the obstacle course racing world championships, 15K, when I fell from an obstacle injuring my good foot and triggering that chill of panic with the possibility of another round of months-long healing. With a team relay the following day, a competition a week later, and a 24-hour race in 2 months, I went into a full-on meltdown as I limped to each obstacle that followed and was eventually talked into pulling myself out of the race and walking off the mountain. I'd been feeling off leading up to race day, and I just wasn't excited day of. Add to that my stressing over having to do the obstacle where I had injured myself years before. I could go down the rabbit hole with what ifs on the impact of those stressors, but I'm going to save myself the unnecessary overthinking. Sometimes shit just happens, and it's ultimately up to us how we handle it. I know I made the right call, but sometimes I still feel extremely disappointed in myself for quitting, especially when injury is the only thing limiting the body from achieving something it's able to do. They can tell me otherwise, but in addition to letting myself down, I feel like I let my team down after having to pull out of the relay. On the positive, a replacement was found, but with that came the painful realization that they were better off with somebody else. Now, if you're listening, don't fight me on this, it's how I feel. Watching my friends achieve their impossible was amazing, but trying to smile to join in celebrating those achievements while with a broken heart was extremely difficult. The battle between wanting to show support and trying to keep from losing my shit when I was already barely hanging on. Overall, the athletic community fails to acknowledge that having the ability to do what we do is a privilege and that injury is a huge loss. The loss among athletes is rarely considered a risk for mental health, despite said loss having a huge impact on our identity. Going from training several times a week to a sedentary life while healing is a huge mindfuck. The FOMO of your friends tackling a course while you're home nursing an injury, able to do nothing more than view photos on social media of a great time and just scroll yourself further into a depression. I didn't isolate, nor did I self-medicate. I did, however, allow myself to feel whatever it is I was feeling and released it all in waves. Small wins, I suppose. Injury is that scary realization that we are not invincible and that we can quite easily be sidelined at any time. Keeping it smart and not jumping back in too soon is the hard part. There needs to be more awareness and acceptance surrounding the mental health aspect of healing from physical injury, if for nothing more than to understand that it takes time, it's not linear, and we're not crazy for fluctuating between emotions at varying intervals. If you have any questions, comments, or shared experiences, feel free to comment them below. Thanks for listening.